So let's just say, I'm going to title this issues. So the first one that, I want to talk about, Sarah mentioned quitting smoking. This could work for any addiction, but I'll write quitting smoking because it's the most common addiction you'll come across. And it's probably one of the most common uses of hypnotherapy. So quitting smoking being the first one. Now the first way of going about it would be to work with parts therapy. There's an addicted part and a part that wants to be healthy. I use this nearly all the time. When I got a quit smoking client, I feel like I need to give you a little taste of something else, so this is another technique I'll just delve into a little bit, and we call it aversion therapy. I don't like aversion therapy personally. I don't like the idea with aversion therapy is to give someone a taste of what it would be like for them to follow down the same path in a negative way. So let's say an aversion therapy is you'll get someone to imagine the future where they still smoke and they're not healthy and they're coughing and their skin looks pale and stuff like that. And then their room smells like an ashtray, they smell like an ashtray, all this kind of horrendous kind of visualization. You get them to future pace in a negative way. This is an aversion therapy. So it's basically negative future pacing. And this can also work with anything, like if someone isn't exercising, you can imagine that future where you've just not done any exercise and you've got kind of fat and lethargic and something like that, you know.
I have a question, but it's not related. Stage hypnosis, what's going on there? Like, I guess it's like rapid induction, but are they choosing good candidates from the crowd somehow?
Yes. Yeah, they usually do like a selection process. They'll get, firstly they get the crowd to maybe put their hands together and then they'll make suggestions like you can't separate those hands no matter how hard you try, and the harder you try the more difficult it becomes to separate those hands. And then at a certain point they'll say, so whose hands are still glued together? And there'll be like some people in the crowd whose hands are still glued together. And usually those who get invited up on stage will be somewhat extroverted. Like they like the attention, they like being on stage, they like the attention, so it kind of works better because they pick people to go on stage who will go along with it. You know, there's a degree to which they're pretending, they're faking it. It's like a performance. The people who are being hypnotized are going with it, they're going with the flow there just because they're enjoying the performance aspect of it.
But do you feel like it's not fully authentic of the sleeping and or like forgetting certain numbers or whatever?
No, I would say it is authentic. I would say that the people who go there are primed to doing it. Yeah. The people who go on stage are people that are willing to do it, so they accept the suggestions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because they know they're going to be told to do ridiculous things.
Yeah.
Compared to someone who wouldn't, and then reject the suggestion, and then it quote unquote didn't work.
Yeah.
Okay.
And rapid inductions are fun. They're really fun. I wouldn't use them therapeutically very much, but they're very fun. It's essentially just, you know, the shock when they're raising their hand and you put your finger on the forehead or something like that. you might just do something physically with them, like shake their hand and then pull the hand and say, and relax all of your tensions, and they'll just drop in that moment. And it's really cool, but it's quite theatrical.
Are we learning that?
Well, I mean, we could demo.
There was well, that's not quite rapid, is it?
What?
The lifting hand, and then you go,
Yeah.
touch them on the head.
But that is the same principle as a rapid induction.
Okay.
The touch on the head and the suggestion at the same time. Erickson would take someone's hand upon meeting them and go and say, I wonder if you're going to have hypnosis now or in a minute. He'd lean right in as you're shaking hands, and then the person would be like, what's going on? Who is this strange wizard? But we digress. I don't want to digress too much. Especially today. Aversion therapy, negative future pacing. A way of using aversion therapy, as I mentioned to Sarah, is 2 paths. So there's a model called the 2 paths model. I'm just going to talk you through that. Let's say you're smoking and then you're in trance. And you can imagine that you're standing at a crossroads and there are 2 paths, one to the left and one to the right. The path to your left will be the path of you continuing smoking, and the path to your right will be the path of you becoming a happier, healthier you. So we have 2 solution focus options here. We've got the left one and the right one. And you can just walk down that left-hand path now, stepping into a future time where you continue to smoke 1 year from now. Imagine smoking 2 years from now and how that is impacting your health and your skin and your breathing. How your energy levels feel a little bit lower, and stepping into 2 years, 3 years from now. Imagining how that impacts the way you smell, your clothes smell, your fingers are stained and teeth are stained, and your energy levels are lower, and you really talk them through this negative solution, future pacing.
Are you the one, you're the one saying all these things, or are you asking them, how do you imagine your teeth look? How do you imagine your fingers smell? How do you imagine your clothes?
Traditionally you would just say, traditionally, I prefer to ask, because I always like clients to generate their own answers.
You would ask what?
Like 1 year from now you continue smoking, what are you noticing about, imagining being in that place, in that time, 1 year from now you've been smoking, how does your health feel? How is your breathing? 10 years from now you've been smoking every day for 10 years, how do you feel? How is your energy levels? How is your skin? What else do you notice? You're talking them through that negative future pace. And then you take them back to the crossroads. So you've walked down the left-hand path, you've seen what that left-hand path shows you, and what future could lie down that left-hand path, and you can now choose to take that right-hand path, where you're a happy, healthy non-smoker. Imagining 1 year from now, how do you feel? 2 years from now. 3 years, 4 years, 10 years. And then you might use suggestions to reinforce that at the end, just kind of riffing on some of the ideas that have been presented. Any questions about that?
Why don't you like it?
Sorry?
You said you don't really like this.
I don't like it. I personally prefer people to follow their inspiration rather than to move away from something that they... But that's my personal opinion.
Is there one that you find more effective?
Well, I find the parts therapy is sufficient.
So you prefer parts, which is following more of an inspiration, than this, which is what, running away from a fear almost, or like?
Yeah, I think I don't like aversion therapy because it kind of it ignores the fact that the part of the person that wanted to smoke in the first place had a reason for doing it.
Okay.
It's rejecting some aspect.
Could you merge the two, maybe? Do a little bit of both?
Yeah, you can merge the two, yeah. You can, all of these things you can play with. I mean, you could add storytelling, you know, as I tell stories when I am giving people stop smoking sessions, I tell people stories about other people that I gave stop smoking sessions to and how they now don't smoke, and, you know. I mean, storytelling is good for everything, and it's also really good because it gives the client time to not have to think about anything. They're just absorbing suggestions symbolically, and you don't have to ask them any questions. They're just listening. We're going to go into that next. Quitting smoking. When I say anxiety, how do you think you would approach anxiety? What kind of things could you do?
I mean, that part therapy as well is good for anxiety.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, part therapy.
Would it be the answer for everything?
It is pretty much the answer for everything. What else do you think you could do? So, like, if you imagine someone coming to you with triggers, they're telling you what their triggers are. You're asking them in the information gathering, where does this anxiety start?
Yeah, regression.
Oh, well, yeah, regression is a very good way. But finding triggers. So the triggers will produce a certain response, and we kind of want to anchor. We want to put an anchor in there. So I'd write anchor, so that when something happens, there's a certain response. So when you feel that anxiety arise, your nervous system can relax. You relax that nervous system. You get a sense of how it feels for those muscles to relax, and just and I would say when doing an anchor, repetition is important. So you get them to play through that scenario over and over again of them releasing the anxiety.
So play through the scenario of them experiencing anxiety and then releasing it?
Yeah, really quickly. And then speed it up more and more is a good way of doing it. So the first time you do it slowly, second time you do it more quickly, third time even faster, fourth time like immediately. I have to click my fingers because it suggests like now.
Okay, what is the snapping? How often do you do snapping? Because I noticed you do it in some of the inductions and then sometimes not.
Yeah, it just has a feeling. I like to do it just because it feels like immediate. It feels like it's quite authoritative. People generally don't like being snapped at, but in trance it's a little bit... I'm laughing because I jokingly did a snap at Olivia the other day and she didn't like it.
I took it personally. But it was like it wasn't expected anyway.
It was supposed to be funny, but it didn't come across like that. So, yeah, the anxiety arises. Notice where you feel it in your body. Notice how it arises, and then switch, letting go of the anxiety, breathing nice and deeply, and being present. I think also one thing with anxiety is coming back to the senses, because often,
and to the present moment.
Yeah. Mindfulness is great. If you know anything about mindfulness, meditation, sorry?
I have a question around like how to not accidentally maybe suggest more negative beliefs by speaking. You know what I mean? By speaking to the anxiety, if that makes sense. Like if you're saying like, okay, you know, you feel anxious, so when you feel anxious, because it's just affirming you feel anxious in a way.
So I would focus on, initially we're saying, we're calling it anxiety. We'll call it anxiety at first, but through information gathering, we'll find out that there's just a causation chain of effects that occur. So like when something happens where you've noticed that the chest tightens before, you can now relax it. So rather than calling it anxiety, we're just referring to sort of physiological or psychophysiological processes that are occurring.
Yeah, I feel like that's really important because you can just otherwise further affirm that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so long as you have the alternate suggestion, it will. Also, like, now this is a little bit of voice tonality, right? You could say the word anxiety in a very light way. And then anxiety arises, you can switch to feeling, just like making it lighter, making it less, or more playful, or even silly. Like when that anxiety arises, you can relax and allow yourself to be present in the moment, which it's like somehow making it a little less. This is an NLP technique, making it less serious. Another NLP technique that I will mention is, do you remember me mentioning where you increase the colours in a situation, increase the feelings, increase the sensations to make that experience more vivid? Like turning up the volume. Well, you can do the opposite. If a particular trigger is very strong, you can drain the colour out of it, make your image smaller, make the feelings smaller. You can have, you can do that. You could even put like silly music in the background. Like have them imagine, I don't know, that or something. So
I'm gonna get just.
Just kind of making that memory and that trigger a little more playful, silly, rather than, because they've attributed it to so much heaviness, weight, or anxiety or something.
So I'm confused a little bit what you're saying around, you're saying the NLP technique is take a bad memory and then drain the colors out of it and then just see it in black and white, or?
Yeah, drain the colors out of it, make the image even smaller, like shrink it down. Turn the volume down on the sounds, or make the voices silly, turn them into Donald Duck or Mickey Mouse, or whatever you can do to take the kind of seriousness out of it. So.
Right. So make the image even smaller and then make the characters in the image silly and different music? Or just, okay, make this down.
Is there like, because here as you mentioned is really like trying to turn it into something positive, but we don't really accept it. you're just like replacing, putting music or whatever. Is there like a method where you accept what is rising? And I mean, there's part therapy, right? But is there like other methods where you really look into anxiety and like accept it, understand it, and dig into it?
Yeah, I mean, you could ask what it is. Why is it there? What are you experiencing when it arises? And I always love thanking it. I like to thank that anxiety for being there, because you know that anxiety is there to help you. In fact, that's so Erickson. Thank the anxiety, thank the body for producing the anxiety. The reason the anxiety exists is something to do with fight or flight, trying to protect the person. And sometimes the anxiety is just running the show, even though there might not be any threats actually in the environment. So you could drain the colour out of the threats that they imagine. You could ask them what they imagine their threats to be, drain the colour out, change the sounds, make them smaller. Give some positive suggestions that actually they're safe and they can, that anxiety can be there when it needs to be, really, because anxiety is a good thing ultimately. It gets a bit out of hand.
And it's there because they can handle it as well.
Yeah.
At some point. I mean, this is.
That would be a good suggestion.
It's there because you can handle it.
It would be a good suggestion. Also, let them know that there are times when they don't experience anxiety. So, like pointing out the fact that they actually, I think one of the things with anxiety is people are anxious about being anxious, and they might forget to recognize the times where they're not anxious. So, like, bring awareness to the fact that actually, and if they can't find it, you just say, "Can you think of a time when you were less anxious?" Bring awareness to times where they weren't anxious or were less anxious.
Like a visualization of a quiet, calm place, and that they can always go back to that emotion, or
that's something you can do. In this instance, what I meant really was you can just ask them, okay, when are you less anxious? And they'll say, actually the other day I remember I was just shopping and it was fine. And it's like, okay, so there are times when you're free from that anxiety. You can kind of capitalize on those resources. There's a good video from Mark Tyrrell that I can post in the group about dealing with anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder. He's very good. Okay.
And anxiety is always about the future. Can we do, most of the time, it's... Can we do something about future pace?
Yep. Yes. Yeah, you could future pace times where they're not anxious. But future pace times where actually they're enjoying themselves. In fact, I'm going to just share this video with you. Here we go. So this guy was trained by Stephen Brooks, but he owns a company called Hypnosis Downloads.
What does that mean?
They're like self-hypnosis recordings to listen to.
Ah, okay.
And they're very good. They're a very amazing company. Here we go. So I'll send you a video about depression. Any more questions about anxiety before I go into depression?
Like, would you do visualizations, like take the feeling into senses, like maybe when you're feeling this energy, you know, you can see it as butterfly. I don't know, you know, like something.
Yeah, you could that's a reframe.
Mhm.
Yeah, you could reframe it. That's another NLP term.
Like, and it's just, you know, a sensation that's
Yeah.
fluttering throughout your body, but it's not unpleasant. It's like butterflies, so you know, something else.
Yeah, like when it arises, actually, it's like, well, isn't it very similar to excitement? It's very similar to excitement. I wonder, I mean, how that what you thought was anxiety could actually be excitement, and how you can enjoy those sensations.
Have you ever had anyone reject that? Reject those sensations or those suggestions because they feel like gaslighted? Like their pain isn't actually being seen or recognized?
I wouldn't do it really early on in the session.
Okay.
Maybe do it a little bit later. It's like we've done we've done a lot of work to. I mean, anxiety is something you work with over a period of time, especially if it's really, really strong. You know, you kind of have to approach it incrementally. I wouldn't reframe it straight away because I think so we don't want to gaslight anybody.
So you wouldn't do it in the first session with someone, or you would?
Maybe it's, like subtly. They might reject it, and that's okay.
Maybe would it help to be like very subtly suggested, like you're saying, of like maybe the sensation you can see it as butterfly, you know, like maybe, and maybe it can mean, but without.
Yeah, so I don't know, maybe. They might be like, oh yeah, I don't know, but maybe. Quitting smoking is usually something you can do in one session.
Really?
Yeah. I had someone who was addicted to to methadone quit after 3 sessions. That was
How does it work? I mean, that's big.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
I think that was
Theories
why.
of why.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think that was why I was like really confused and feeling like hypnosis like wasn't working on me, because I expected it to be this like the conscious mind that disappears and you're like unconscious basically, you know, and someone's talking directly to your subconscious mind because of the profound shift that can happen. And I didn't think that it could be something so, I didn't think you could be present for that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But quitting smoking in 1 session and then meth, somebody addicted to meth in 3 sessions.
Yeah.
And you use parts with them?
I used parts therapy. One thing that really stuck with him was this metaphor of liquid handcuffs.
Liquid?
Handcuffs. Taking off these liquid handcuffs. I was using storytelling about metaphors about him being in a jail cell, and I was trapped in this jail cell, and I was freeing himself from the jail cell. That seemed to be the thing that worked the best for him.
For the meth plane or cigarettes?
Yeah.
What about cigarettes?
Parts usually.
They just followed up with you and were like, hey, I haven't smoked in so long.
Yeah, I usually check in after 1 week.
After 1 week?
Yeah. And then if they still have a problem, we can book another session if they want to. But, there's some people Anxiety, I will suggest doing multiple sessions. Depression, I would suggest doing multiple sessions.
For quitting smoking, can we also have like envision what is being healthy?
Yes.
The healthy bit, like,
Yeah.
and just more focusing on like what you'll be doing if you were healthy and
That's how I would do it. Yeah. Yeah.
because I quit smoking in one night. I was like, there's things about my life. Like I was stressed, a lot of things. And one night I was like, okay, I need to do something about that. So what can I do? I cannot change people. I need to change myself. So I was just envisioning like all these like bad things I could just do to. I was like, okay, what is to be like a healthier person? Like quit smoking. I don't know. I really had that in my mind, and I quit smoking. And because I was thinking, okay, I am healthy. I am healthy.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to embody that idea of being healthy.
Something about smoking actually I should suggest is to read a book called The Easy Way to Stop Smoking by a guy called Alan Carr. It's not hypnotherapy, but the principles in that book are excellent. They're really good. He has this like, he uses this metaphor of nicotine being like a little monster that's like feed me, and the more you feed it, the bigger it grows. So you need to like basically stop feeding it and kill it. This is it. And it's really nice. He has also he cuts through these ideas and beliefs that people have about smoking and why they smoke and why they want to smoke, and he kind of like shows that they're all illusions. So I read that book. The Easy Way to Stop Smoking.
A friend told me as well like something else about mindfulness.
Yeah.
Like, you know as a smoker that smoking is bad for you, right? It's bad for your health, for a lot of things. So just let's do it consciously.
Yeah.
Every time you're smoking, you take it consciously, you smoke consciously, you really enjoy that consciously, and then at some point it's shifting because you won't appreciate it as it is. You will really like, oh, it doesn't smell good, or this, and like.
I feel like for me having explored
working.
in like the native cultures, and they use tobacco for prayer, and sometimes I sit and I smoke and I send prayers out when I exhale, so it sounded like another element of, oh, this is good.
But they don't inhale.
They don't inhale, you're right. That's good. Depression. What kind of things do you think someone with depression might experience?
Can I just ask you a question about it?
Yeah.
Let's say somebody's doing ice baths to help them recirculate their brain and stuff and learn. Could you do hypnosis to like every time you go to the ice bath, like merging it with something that they're regularly doing in their life to then just make it effective and to have the two work with each other in that way?
That's awesome. I mean, that's really, really good. If you can find any resources from their life, anything they do, if it's an ice bath, if it's a morning routine, if it's anything that you can find that you can use as an anchor for the therapy, it's really good. Alright?
You feel that drumming?
Yeah. So
what somebody might be experiencing with depression?
yeah.
Lack of motivation.
So yeah, lack of motivation.
Like lack of sense of things.
Yeah.
Do you find depression and anxiety often come together?
What do you mean by lack of sense of things?
Like life doesn't make sense, so yeah, or what I'm doing now doesn't make sense, so I don't know what I'm doing. It's like really linked to lack of motivation, like
Yeah, like pointlessness. Or,
Yeah.
Um,
maybe a sense of being alone as well, loneliness, not being understood.
yeah. So I'm right. So loneliness. I've got loneliness terribly there. One thing I mentioned is that people with depression are often overwhelmed. Like there's so many things that they've neglected, and they have to, they might have to address these things one by one. They can have like difficult relationships, and they might hate their work, or they might have a lot of work to do and they're not doing it, and then dishes are piling up, and
And they don't know like where to starting from.
yeah. So an element with regards to the overwhelm is you can do a kind of coaching, basically like breaking down the things that are concerning them into measurable steps, and then guiding them through achieving those steps, like solution focusing. So like trying to find out the nuances of the depression, and then like going one by one is a good strategy. Because I think oftentimes depression is the result of like multiple things all happening at once that are not being addressed.
I didn't really understand what you meant. You're saying that I didn't get that.
So, like, depression is often multifaceted, and that there'll be multiple areas of the life of the client that are being unfulfilled or are presenting a challenge in some way. So their work is challenging, their relationships are challenging, their finances are challenging, they're not fulfilling their dreams or goals or
Also improving the self-esteem.
self-esteem. Yeah. I know so when it comes to information gathering, we want to find as many different things that are contributing to the depression, and then like address them sequentially, address them one by one, address the finances, address the relationship, address the job, and we can use solution focus for that, for those each thing. We'll probably do it over a series of sessions, and kind of maybe ask what is the most challenging of those things, and they can address that first. Or you could ask them what's the least challenging of those things, and they can address that first, because they'll get a sense of accomplishment.
Yeah. Address with solution focusing, is it?
Yeah. You could use parts therapy on each issue as well.
Because we want to build the self-confidence that they can do it.
Yeah. So if you give them one of their overwhelming tasks, the easiest one to do, and they do it, then they'll gain some self-confidence.
And what about doing their homework, like a positive affirmation?
Yes, Yeah, so you could ask like what step can you take between now and next week to fix this problem?
Yeah, very small ones, like to build. But I guess this is like a long therapy, right? It's depression.
Yeah, no, I mean you could do it maybe 4 sessions. It could be 10. It really depends on the person. There's different degrees of depression and different levels of complexity that people might have.
And when someone arrives to see, like someone comes to see you, do you do like an introductory like session, and would you like suggest a number of sessions?
Yeah, I would suggest a number. Sometimes I do a first session, and then I suggest, okay, I think we'll need, like, say 4 sessions, and then see how you're doing after that. I usually go with 4. 4 is quite a nice number. And I usually put them quite close to each other, like within a week.
So is there a certain type of session you would do for people who are, like I'm just thinking of like my family and things like that who would be a little, I don't know how they feel about envisioning being on a cloud and, all the abstractness.
Yeah.
But, so is there something, a different approach maybe that you might have to someone who's way more closed off to this, or it's...
I think you'll find, I'll be surprised to find that when someone is touching on a trance, that their imagination can be quite vivid, even if they don't seem like they would be. But I mean, there's always that boring approach that you mentioned from the quantum healing, where it's just you can just relax. But usually when someone's like relaxed enough, you can work with the imagination. Maybe you don't have to go so abstract, you can just do like a beautiful garden. Everyone can imagine a beautiful garden. Or you could ask them to think of a place that feels good to them, like a place where they feel relaxed. It could be their living room, and just describing the living room. It's a place that exists, it's a little less mind generated, if that makes sense.
And would you ever not work on family and instead to have them go to someone else? Or...
I mean, I have worked with my family. But I would probably, I would say that it's less effective working with people who are that close to you, like people that have known you since you were a kid. Because they have like their own image of you and what you're like, and their own assumptions and presuppositions about who you are and what you're like. And that can kind of get in the way of the efficacy of the therapy.
And be able to have some resistance.
Yeah. I could be working with my mum and me, and I could be working with my mum and she would, think, oh, this is Bradley, I gave birth to him, I've seen him. I've seen him go through all kinds of things. I've seen him poop his pants, I've seen him stumble, I've seen him fall, I've seen him get up again, I've seen him, I've seen all kinds of stuff. So it can be hard when, especially like from my mother, for example, like the connection is so strong, the bond is so strong that it's hard to separate that. She knows my voice, she physically, hormonally responds to me, whether she wants to or not. She's probably worried about me right now because I'm in Guatemala and she's kind of wired to view me in a certain light. Lack of motivation. What do you think you could do for lack of motivation? I would say parts therapy because you can do for everything. But let's say what kind of solution focused stuff could you do for lack of motivation? What would you have as someone who's lacking motivation? Imagine.
I kind of don't remember what solution purposes.
Solution focus is basically focusing on the solution, right? And like having them, like future pacing is a form of solution focus. Have them seeing themselves fulfilling the thing that they want. So like public speaking simply and easily, or taking steps to accomplish their dreams, or you have them imagine it and live it through their imagination. That's what we call solution focus.
What about having them imagining like something that they achieved, that they're very proud of,
Yeah.
and getting that feeling into a task they have to do, like having this intention, like before doing a task, you have this intention for yourself, and you're putting like focusing on that intention to do the task.
Yeah, so you've got them already like feeling good having it to accomplish it.
Yeah.
So they have this goal in their mind that they can like hold on to.
Yeah.
And if you make it vivid enough, then it might give them motivation. So yeah, that was kind of the thing I had in mind. Like give them a reason to be motivated. You might even just say like, you know, you're gonna get through this. Like, imagine how it will be when you've done it, when you've gone through this journey of healing. And it can take some time, but with every step you take, you get closer and closer to this goal. You can ask them, how does it feel when you're free of depression? Imagine being free of depression. Oh, I'm lighter. I have more friends. I play football, whatever it is. This is the same for the pointlessness kind of thing, is the same kind of solution.
I didn't fully understand. Like you were saying, you would ideally do what for the lack of motivation?
I'd give them something to be motivated for. So I'll give them a solution. How will it be when you're free of depression? Imagine being free of depression now. How are you? And they'll say, I'm lighter, life is easier,
Future based.
future pacing, yeah.
Yeah, future based. I feel like I want to do hypnosis for myself like every time I have a challenge now.
You kind of can. Solution focus. Actually, I found myself doing path therapy kind of on myself. It doesn't work as well as when someone else is doing it for you, but
Yeah?
I did it. I did it for myself the other week, I remember.
Do
It
you
did help.
record yourself?
No, I actually just did it in my imagination. It's just,
Nice.
yeah. It's sort of like I'm like talking to myself as a therapist and a client at the same time.
You can do a dissociation.
Yeah. But yeah, recording it is better, I would say. But then you don't have feedback. Because when you're recording it, you can't ask questions and answer the questions. It's just, you see what I'm saying?
With Zoom, and online, do you find that clients go deeper because they're more comfortable?
I don't know. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I haven't. I mean, I've still got deepeners and stuff like that to help them, and I can always ask them how deep they are. But I haven't seen any difference actually doing it online and doing it in person. Yeah, it still seems to have some effect.
And what would happen if your connection failed?
Well, it has before,
Really?
several times. In San Cristobal, it kept cutting out.
Yeah.
That's annoying. It's annoying. There's not much you can do about it
Yeah.
when the connection cuts out. Because I kind of do a quick trance induction again when it comes back. I do a quick trance induction and carry on where we left off.
When the connection, oh, what if the call hangs up in general?
If the call hangs up in general, then I will apologise profusely and book another session if they're okay with it.
What happens to the person on the other end? Like they just realize that the call
Yeah.
and they didn't wake themselves up.
Yeah, they might just be like, oh, it's gone. He's being very quiet right now. And then, oh.
Oh, interesting session.
Yeah.
That was very disruptive. He just left.
What if the person would be like in a regression or just like in a envisioning themselves as another part and it was like right during that moment?
Oh, sorry. You can give, when you're doing like something with technology, even in like self-hypnosis recording, I add some like a suggestion like, if anything happens, anything changes, technology breaks down, anything like that, you can come out of trance safely and easily and feel really good and pleasant. I'd give that kind of suggestion as a kind of feel-safe, so that they have something to return to. If the connection breaks, they remember you saying that. Any kind of issues you'd like to discuss while we're here? Other than
Like issues like Zoom or issues like
issues
depression, anxiety?
Yeah, depression, anxiety,
Traumas.
smoking, traumas. You want to talk about traumas?
Mhm.
Okay. Traumas, yay, everyone's favourite subject. I mean, it's one of my favourite subjects as well. And like I hang out with all these hippies that talk about traumas all the time, so I feel like it's everyone's favourite subject. Maybe it's just a trauma of the book.
But it is!
Yeah, I know. So you can have them imagine, solution focused, have them imagine what it's like to be free from trauma. But firstly, you want to find out what the trauma, how the trauma is manifesting. How is it manifesting in their life?
If they know that it's a trauma. Because they can also arrive not knowing that it's trauma linked.
I guess you don't need to call it trauma.
Yeah, first. it's like super heavy.
Yeah, trauma's got this. I mean, like, I know. I remember someone saying, "I don't think I have any traumas,"
Yeah.
and I was like, I think you probably do. It's just that we have different degrees of trauma, right? There's little traumas and big traumas, and little traumas we experience on a day-to-day basis. But they might not call it a trauma. But whatever it is, if there is an issue, there's probably a trauma somewhere. And the trauma, I mean, as we can't go into regression here, you can use parts therapy, finding out how it manifests, what habits it's producing. Maybe it's closing off in relationships, not being open to relationships, or leaving them after like 3 weeks because they freak out or something. Then that's the pattern that you've information gathered, that they leave relationships after 3 weeks. And then you can kind of find the opposite. What pattern would they like instead? Oh, they persevere and they see what happens by staying in the relationship after the 3 weeks. And they, you know, you can give them a solution-focused future pace, for one thing. And then you can do a parts therapy. You can talk to that part that freaks out and give it what it needs. Find out what's up with it, what it wants.
And if they don't know the sources, but just the patterns,
Yeah, that's okay.
that's okay. Are you trying to go further, like as regression, to understand, or sometimes you don't need because
I would say probably 90% of the time you don't need to.
you don't need to, right?
Yeah. 90% of the time you don't need to regress. You're just changing something now. You're changing something now. Even if you do a regression, you're changing something now. Even that regression is a memory of something that happened that might not be accurate fully. So they're just perceiving that memory from the position of being here now. So actually, even that memory is somewhat a fiction in their mind, even in the regression. Because it's not now. Anything that's not now is somewhat fictitious. Our memories can be very unreliable. Our perception of the future can be very unreliable, but we can play with it and we can use it advantageously. So by just giving counter habits, giving counter suggestions to the trauma, they can heal the trauma without even needing to regress. Because the energetic signature of that trauma is no longer there. Does that make sense?
By changing the habit, right? By breaking down the pattern, for
Yeah.
instance.
Does that make sense?
I don't get it. The breaking down the habit by changing the signature?
Okay, so yeah, sorry, maybe my language is a little bit confusing. So I'm saying that we don't necessarily need to do a regression to overcome a trauma. Because, like say, using parts therapy or using parts therapy, you could potentially heal what effect that trauma is having. So that you don't need to go back in time, because whatever the energetic signature, the way that it's manifesting in their life, it no longer does that anymore. So it's kind of healing the trauma vicariously without going, indirectly. So you're not going to the past, but the trauma, the effect of the trauma is being released in the session by doing parts therapy, or by giving a solution focus, i.e., in this case, habits that are that contrast the habits that the trauma was manifesting as. Is that clearer?
Yeah.
It's quite hard to put some of these ideas into words in a way that it's understandable by everyone, and of course I've got my own framework and understanding of things. So if you don't understand something, please ask, and it's all good. And then it gives me an opportunity to say things in a different way, and then other people might understand in a better way. So. Anything else that you'd like to, topics that you'd like to look into?
On that, can we do more somatic work as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. So for traumas you can give counter suggestions. For counter suggestions I mean suggestions that are in opposition to the things they're currently experiencing. Or you could give, like a parts work. And solution focus, as always, all of these things work pretty well for nearly everything And yeah, somatic would be nice. Somatic is also good for anxiety. And depression. Sometimes people are numb when they're depressed. And the somatic work can give them a sense of feeling. And seeing what's beneath it, you know, like depression is kind of like, it's almost like an emotional shutdown.
What about like physical ailments, kind of thing, like traumas? Like I'm thinking of like, yeah, just maybe.
Let's say someone has a broken bone or a chronic illness or something.
Yeah, yeah. And also I feel like a lot of people go to hypnotherapy for like sexual dysfunction and things as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think with like sexual dysfunction is, it's a tricky one because it can be psychological. And if it's psychological, then it's much easier to deal with hypnotherapy because you're just kind of helping them overcome their concerns about, like, I'd say not being able to get an erection or something to that effect. Then there can be physical reasons why someone would have sexual dysfunction, like diabetes or physical trauma, like an injury. Now, if you want to address an illness like a diabetes caused, or you could experiment with visualization. Maybe like a combination between visualization and somatic things, so you're feeling the part of the body that has a problem, and maybe you can add some visualizations in, like if it's a broken bone, you can like have imagine little like workers building the bone and building it all up and putting it all together again, and speeding up the process of their healing. With sexual dysfunction, you could have imagining that whatever is constricting blood flow could, just like chip away at the things that could, maybe bring some energies in that chipping away at the stuff that's constricting blood flow and allowing the blood to flow smoothly. Or if you know about other modalities of healing, like when I think of sexual dysfunction, I think of kidneys, because I kind of a little bit studied Chinese medicine, and I know that Jing, like our life force essence, exists in our sexual fluids, which is produced by our kidneys. So you might want to heal the kidneys and work on that.
And having beautiful like visualization about water, because kidney is water.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
And it's also worth, if you have a client who wants to approach some physical issue, find traditional or naturopathic ways of healing things and just learn about them and bring them in, creatively bring them into your hypnotherapy session.
Is there a liability with that?
Is there a liability with it?
Yeah, like offering medical advice when you're not a doctor.
Well, I'm thinking in terms of visualization. So, if, like in Chinese medicine, like healing kidneys, you could get them to guide them to heal kidneys, and you're not claiming to be a licensed Chinese medicine practitioner. You could give advice by mentioning that in Chinese medicine, this is the case. I'm not a licensed TCM practitioner, but I know that this is a thing. Maybe you want to look into it.
Giving suggestion to
And if it's like partially emotional trauma, or like this person, it comes up that they were violated or whatever, like what would be, yeah, I'm just thinking of people coming with that type of trauma and the best way to work with them.
Yeah. I mean, sexual trauma can be a regression area. But a lot of people have sexual trauma. You'd be surprised, or not surprised. I'm not surprised anymore, but I was. The parts will work. You can look into the. You ask questions really, and it can be quite intimate questions. So you'd have to get there very kind of gently. People are a lot more open in trance. People will be a lot more communicative when they're in trance. So if you find that they're withholding information, maybe ask them sensitively while they're in trance, and they're more likely to answer. Because they've already put so much trust in you to get into that state already that they're going to be more able to answer your questions. And you could ask, for example, so what is preventing you from, I don't know, from having the sex life you want or the sexuality you want? And you could have that part manifest in front of them, and it could be that it's scared, it's terrified, or it's frozen, you know, just like in fight, flight, freeze response. Freeze seems to be the go-to response for sexual trauma.
Okay, and I'm guessing it's probably best not to fully go into like the stories and things if there is trauma that, like physical violating and trauma that occurred. At
If-
least not in trance, but if they wanted to talk about it in.
Yeah, a lot of people will talk about it if they know about it.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's hidden, like in their subconscious. But a lot of people talk about it, and it's so yeah, it's good to, even if they talk about it in trance, it doesn't necessarily have to be a regression. It could just be more like an analysis. If people tell you that stuff, I mean, a lot of people believe that they need to go into the past to heal the future, because traditional psychotherapy has that model. But it's not always the case. So a lot of people tell you their whole history and all of their traumas, thinking that that's necessary for us to know, and it actually isn't always necessary for us to know. But we listen anyway. And you get a better insight into that person. How you use that information is up to your discretion. Any other questions there?
When you said that it doesn't have to be a regression, like that they can talk about it in trance, but it doesn't have to be a regression, what do you mean by that? Like that in trance they could speak to it, but not fall into...
Not relive it, yeah. They can like remember it or talk about it. And it's not necessarily the same as being in that body, in that period, in that room where it was occurring. They could just, you know.
And if that happened, then you would...
If that happened, you can... I would approach it with the parts kind of framework. So what do you need in that situation? Protection, give protection. That's like my simple regression solution.
What would be the precautions when you know that they're coming to see you talking about traumas? What are the precautions we need to take, when discussing about these topics? Because there's some therapy they will say that you need to be careful when you open a wound.
Yes.
Like you need to be able to support and
Yes.
so.
So I would say that, like I mentioned, some people will just already come to you because they know what their traumas are. And we're generally not trying to dig into traumas like the history of them and the past and the memories. If it does occur, and it hasn't occurred to me that that's happened, that they've opened up like a Pandora's box that they can't close, sort of thing. That hasn't happened. But I've seen it happen through traditional psychotherapy with people. But I would give some balm, like give them a good feeling and allow them to return to this good feeling. And you could do some things like draining the colour out and making it smaller. Maybe not making it silly, because that might not be appropriate for that. But just doing something so that the intensity of their memory isn't so strong. Like, there's only so much we can do in a session, in an hour and a half, and if something big comes up, then we might have to just like put it to bed and give it a hug and
Like create that sense of safety from the very beginning, so that
Yeah.
they can always go back to that.
yeah. And if something comes up that's challenging, you can have them return to a sense of safety. And then even suggest that whenever this arises, you can return to that sense of safety. Whenever this issue arises, you can return to this sense of safety. There's like this switching technique. When this happens, this happens. We have 10 minutes, so any other any issues that come to mind that you would be curious about working with and how to go about it?
Fear.
Fear.
There's so many kind of fears.
Yeah, I guess it kind of falls into a similar, like phobias, you mean?
No, but actually it's a good point as well, yeah.
Yeah, phobias is a great
Phobias.
one. Phobias, people come with phobias. Sometimes they overcome it in one session. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes it takes more. But, and it can be very mysterious. But one way of you need to check what they're afraid of. Like, so if they're afraid of, I had a client who was afraid of sharks. Right? Not only was she afraid of sharks, she was afraid of cartoons of sharks. She was afraid of any imagery or suggestion of a shark. So you would ask, like, you would try and find the degree of the phobia. So you're afraid of sharks. Are you afraid of a photo of a shark? And they might say yes or no. Or I'm afraid of a cartoon of a shark. And they would say yes or no. When I say shark, what happens? They're like, I'm gonna leave.
Baby shark.
Baby shark. I know, she would have watched Baby
Shark.
She would have watched Baby Shark and would have had a terrible time. But she overcame it in one session.
Wow.
And what was
Baby shark.
fascinating was, I actually did a regression with her, but she had a memory of swimming in the sea with her dad, and he was actually a dolphin, but she saw her dad panic and think it was a shark and run out of the water when she was a kid. So she had this associated thing like, oh, Dad is scared of sharks. I should be scared of sharks. So I had her rewrite the memory, like replay through the memory, imagine that she was, her dad actually stayed in the water and was like, oh, it's a dolphin, and they played and had a good time, and you know, give suggestions that actually sharks don't want to bother humans. They're afraid of humans. You know, it's really rare that a shark will actually attack a human.
Like scientific.
Yeah, just little information like that. But I wouldn't say that in the beginning. I'd say while they're in a trance.
First of all.
Yeah. First of all, they're not going to attack you.
They're not going to attack you.
It's going to be fine. Like, what are you worried about?
I'm confusing you.
Yeah. And then I just gave lots of suggestions about her being okay with seeing sharks, and it's like, actually, you know, you can imagine now seeing a photo of a shark, and it's just a photo. It's just like ink on a page, shaped like a shark.
Getting to the facts.
Yeah, just being really like. That was how I approached this phobia in particular. What was interesting was she was still afraid of sharks for several days after the session, and then she had a dream, maybe 3 days later, where her dad was with these sharks and having a good old time, and then the next day the phobia had went.
Wow.
So sometimes when you do work on the subconscious, it manifests in dreams, and it heals in their dreams. And I think that's pretty neat. And I tell that story to people often in trance. It's one of my favourite storytelling sessions I've had. And, I've got a great story out of it that I can use to express the power of the subconscious mind, and how if something doesn't work right away, it doesn't mean it won't work.
So you had her go back to the memory, and instead of her dad, maybe just suggest and what would have it been like? Like, how did you say that?
I think let's just imagine that you went in that water with your dad, and now he's really enjoying the time in there, and you realise it's a dolphin, and there's a kind of a playfulness and excitement, and you can see him. And you feel excited as well to see your dad so excited, and then if someone, sometimes you might need to work incrementally. So I'm afraid of a cartoon. I mean, in this instance it was one session, but sometimes it might be that if they're afraid of a cartoon of a shark, they have to work on that first. So working with healing the image of the cartoon of the shark, and then with the picture of the shark, and then with seeing a shark in a tank. It's like doing it progressively. So I do that with spiders a lot. A lot of people have a spider fear, and I work with cartoon spiders, toy spiders. I get them to imagine all of these different levels of spider, and then little spiders, big spiders, tarantulas. There's crazy bird-eating spiders from Australia. You wouldn't one of them on your midnight.
How do you gauge how to work with them based on the phobia and the degree of whether it's just going to be an image or a cartoon or...
Sometimes you have to run on assumption. I did this in one session with this girl because she only could afford one session. So I just did everything I could in that one session. If you have multiple sessions, you can be a little more okay, we're going to address this slowly and incrementally, which is probably a better approach. But how would you know? I guess from the information gathering as well, you can get a sense. I would ask, so if I get you to imagine a shark, or being with a shark, how does that feel? If I get you to imagine looking at a shark in a tank, how does that feel? If I get you to imagine looking at a photo of a shark, how does that feel? If I get you to imagine looking at a cartoon of a shark, how does that feel? If I get you to imagine the word shark, how does that feel?
solution focused, basically.
Yeah, mostly.
Future facing.
You can do it like future pacing, but like even imagine it being now. So they just, yeah. It's like when you see a shark, if you're flying, you just feel calm. And you could ask them how they would feel, how they would like to feel instead. And, oh, I just don't want to care about it. It's like, okay, so you're there, there's a shark, you just don't care. What's that like? I had someone get over a phobia of cats entirely with storytelling. In one session. I made up this whole story about boats going out into the shore, and one boat was a phobia of cats, and then it went over the horizon into the distance, and then this new boat comes in with these people that all love cats on this boat, and they like come out and they're showing you like, wow, look, oh, this cat is so great, and they're playing with this cat. And the next day she was petting a cat, and when I saw her before, she would like panic and run away anytime she saw the cat. And that was cool. So storytelling is a really nice way of doing things. Break down into parts, storytelling. You can, changing memories is a nice way of dealing with phobias. Like a switch kind of thing, like a somatic thing when you feel this, and then you create an anchor when you feel this, you will be calm. When you notice a shark, you will be, anchors are really good for phobias. This is a camera. I'm going to be filming everything here. I don't know how much of this will ever be useful for the general public.
Will we get the videos?
Do you want them?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can have them. Please don't share raw videos with.
No. I just for reference.
Yeah. I had someone overcome panic attacks in one session. That's usually something you do over the several sections, but I did it in 20 minutes over the phone.
Whoa.
Yeah. And what I did was I just got her to notice what happens, what triggers the panic attack. When that trigger arises, she switches into relaxing her body, having a breath and being present in the moment. I just did that and it worked. And the panic attacks ended. On the phone. I couldn't even see what she was like. So fears are the same as phobias, I think. Kind of the same kind of process.
Lunchtime.
It's lunchtime. It's lunchtime.
Time guardian.
We're going to come back and do story time straight away.
Cool. Thank you.